Good morning, Spirit and Truth Sanctuary and Connection. I bring you greetings from Pastor D.E. and Brandy. I knew that you would want an update on them. They are doing well. They are at home quarantining, obviously. They have, as Pastor D.E. told us on Sunday, they have both tested positive for COVID, but they are doing very nicely. He said this last night when he texted me, he said he was even beginning to get a little bit of his taste and smell back. So that is wonderful. We are still sending all of our prayers and love and positive energy toward them and know that they will be just fine. They are watching from home right now. Hello, hello. So we're going to begin with our morning blessing. And interestingly enough, I remember I started this morning blessing toward the beginning of last year. And it was only going to be for the 1 week. And then I liked it so much, I added a little bit to it. And we have said it consistently every single week of this year. So hopefully that has gotten into our consciousness and in our hearts. Next week, however, because this is the very last Tuesday, if you can believe it or not, of 2020, next week I will have a brand new morning blessing. So for the very last time together, let's say our morning blessing. Spirit of truth, we come to you today to declare these intentions that we as a corporate body are focusing on this year. We have joyful, energetic bodies. We have loving, compassionate hearts. We have restful, alert minds, and we experience lightness of being in all things. It is our intention today and for the rest of this year to replace any resistance, disorder, effort, or struggle with gentleness, clarity, health, eagerness, love, joy, and freedom as our natural state. It is our prayer, our intention, and our heart's desire to be fully awake today and always. We believe it, we perceive it, and now we receive it in the name and nature of the Christ. Amen, and so it is. I am going to get a sip of water before I begin. I also want to give a little shout out to my mother today. She is famous sometimes in our inner circle for getting people presents that she wants them to have rather than what they would like to have. But she did such a great job in her present giving this year. If you can see around my neck, I'm wearing a beautiful necklace that's an ankh. And she remembered that I had spoken about the ankh in one of my teachings, and she ordered this for me, and it's just beautiful. So thank you, Mother, for paying such close attention and for giving me something so beautiful for Christmas this year. Okay, let's start with our quotes. Number 1, do not eliminate, transform. I love that idea. Sometimes at the end of a year, people will want to do a big clean out. And that can be good and helpful sometimes, but other times you can recycle things. And this applies to ideas and beliefs as well as to our material things. Getting rid of, throwing out, eliminating is not always what's most efficient. Sometimes if you just shift your perspective a little, you'll find that a certain thing can still be useful to you, just in a different way or for a different purpose. So the quote here urges us to focus on transforming things rather than eliminating them altogether. Another good word for that, which is a concept we have spent some time talking about here at Connection, is to transmute. Remember that teaching? Transmuting the poison into medicine. That's another life skill that is very useful. The biblical basis for that would be taking something that was intended for evil and turning it to our good. I'm just dropping these thoughts into your consciousness. I'm not sure who it's for. That just kind of came to me as I was reading this quote. And so hopefully some of you will have an aha moment by hearing that. Okay, next quote. It's not what the world holds for you, it's what you bring to it. And that is very reminiscent of the famous quote by President John F. Kennedy, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And the reason I like that one is because that puts you in the position of power rather than in the victim consciousness. It's not what something or somebody, a country, a God, other people can do for you. That's not what your outlook on life is. It's what you already have that you bring to the table and to everyone else. Okay, next. You do not have to be forceful to get what you want. Relax and allow things to come to you. No need to manipulate, give ultimatums, or bully people to get what you desire. Receive and recognize the good that you already have in your life. And through that gratitude, watch the good in your life increase. I was listening to a song the other day, and there was a line in it that said, "Only love can make love." And I love that because it's like fear doesn't create love, anger doesn't create love, this bullying, resistance, demanding, none of that creates love. The only thing that can create love or good is love and good itself. That creates more of what it is. Nothing else can create it. Okay, next, life is an echo. What you send out comes back. What you sow, you reap. What you give, you get. What you see in others exists in you. Do not judge, so you will not be judged. Radiate and give love, and love will come back to you. Next, do the good that is in front of you, even if it seems awfully small. We've talked about this before too. Even small actions that you do have big ripple effects. So don't ever keep yourself from doing something good because you think that it's too small to make a difference. When I read this, I thought about that little boy that went to hear Jesus speak that day that had his little lunch of the 5 loaves and 2 fish. I bet he never thought that that little lunch would end up feeding 5,000 people. But if he had not had the courage to go give it to one of the disciples, then that miracle would never have happened. Okay, next, when you raise your vibration, all that is not in alignment with it will naturally leave your life. I love, 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 love that one. You don't have to fight. You don't have to set boundaries. You don't have to tell people. All you have to do is raise your vibration, and then everything and everyone that's not there will just fall away. Okay, man, those were some excellent quotes. And one of the ways I know this is true is because they are what I consider to be timeless. Believe it or not, I have read every single one of those quotes to you before as part of an earlier teaching that I did. Some of you may remember, some of you may not, some of you may be new. And I have read them to myself many, many more times before that. And each time, I still find deep meaning in them. It's like a really good story or a movie, a song, passage of scripture, any form of art, really. If it's expressing a universal truth, you can get something new and fresh from it every time you read it or hear it or watch it. And that actually works out very well for our purposes today because the bulk of the material I'll be presenting to you today is from a teaching that I have already done. But as always, I have added some new stuff in as well as some fresh perspectives on the old stuff. Just like I said about in the first quote, sometimes recycling or transforming is a better idea and much more efficient than eliminating. And if something is a universal truth, then it is meaningful to you in a new way every time you approach it. So my title today is All and Nothing. Not all or nothing, but all and nothing. It's a paradox. Part of this shift that we've just experienced is coming out of this place of it's got to either be this or that. Inclusion, which is what we're all about here, means just that. It includes everything. So specifically, I'm going to talk about the concept of darkness being both all and nothing. A lot of people have a very one-sided view of darkness, but we're going to take a look at the other side today, which we've done before, but we're going to revisit it today from a little different angle. And that angle is different because we are different. We've all just been through an extraordinary year. Most of the time when people use that word extraordinary, they're describing something in a positive way, like a delicious meal. They'll say, that was extraordinary. But it actually, if you break the word down, it just means extra or more than ordinary. In other words, out of the ordinary or other than ordinary. And 2020 most definitely qualifies as that. So since we're all in a different place now, having experienced all we have during the past 12 months, we're seeing things from a different angle, from the place that we're standing in now as a result of the shifts and the changes made by us and in us during this extraordinary year, including our view of the whole concept of what it means to be in darkness. So let's begin. But before I start, just one more quote that I came across recently that I think fits in very well today, and it is, someone said, "I thought 2020 was going to be the year I got everything I wanted. Now I know 2020 was the year I learned to appreciate everything I already have." Amen. Okay, so let's appreciate today this teaching on darkness being all and nothing, which is something we already have in that we've talked about it before. But today we're going to see it with new eyes, and we're going to hear it with new ears that have come through the enormous shift of the year 2020. Okay, let's go. Because this earthly plane is one of duality, and because we, maybe not individually as individuals, but collectively chose to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we as humans instinctively and necessarily know things by knowing their opposite. And we make judgments about the nature of those opposites by labeling them as either good or bad. For whatever reason, here in this dualistic existence, we usually choose to see and associate light with goodness or God and dark with bad or the devil. And because of this, darkness has gotten a bad rap. But as we here at Spirit and Truth know, God is all. God is one. There is no separation in the spirit realm where God dwells. God is good, yes, but more than that, God is all. God is light. However, if we truly believe God is all, we must also accept the darkness or the dark side of God. Now, the first time someone who has been raised in a largely Judeo-Christian culture hears that statement, it just sounds wrong to our ears. But this isn't the first time most of us have heard it. However, sometimes because of the years and years of our cultural conditioning and the religious teachings that we've been indoctrinated by for centuries now, it takes us saying it and hearing it more than once to have it really sink in. As a result, most of us still, to some degree, are more comfortable with the good side of God, with the light, and we tend to stay away from the dark. We don't like the darkness because it is uncertain. It holds an air of mystery, which frightens a lot of people. We're not as sure of ourselves in the dark as we are in the light, where we can see everything, unless we've become accustomed to being there. And I think 2020 was a big opportunity for us to become accustomed to what it's like to just sit in uncertainty and a degree of darkness. I think most of you would agree with that. There are certain animals who are described as nocturnal creatures, and they're called that because they hunt at night. And they were created to do this, and therefore their eyes are equipped to see better in the dark than other animals who hunt during the day. Even we as humans can train ourselves to see better in the dark if we expose ourselves to it enough. I remember my husband taught me a little trick. He said, if the lights go out suddenly and you're like in the house or whatever and you're walking, he said, just stop and shut your eyes for 30 seconds. And when you open them back up, you'll be able to see a little bit more, because closing your eyes shuts everything down, and that's what you're accustoming your system to the darkness. Okay, so just for today, I would like for you to suspend all the cultural and religious conditioning that has caused you to fear or reject the concept of darkness because you think of it as bad or evil. And we're going to look at the other side of the coin, as we often do here at Connection. I'm going to take another sip of water. So as I said, we live in a world of opposites, of contrast, and we can only know light in the context of its opposite, or of that which it is not, dark. In a way, we could say that light is only half of the story. It is an incomplete picture without the darkness, okay? Even our world shows us that. We have 12 hours of daylight, whatever, we have the light and then we have the dark, and that completes the day. If we only had light all the time, it would be an incomplete day. We can also think about it in human terms. Let's say we think of God the Father, the masculine characteristics of God, as light. Well, what's the other half of that? God in female form. And some people use the word goddess or refer to Mother God. The female characteristics of spirit must then, in order to be complete and whole, be represented by the darkness. And that's fitting, really, because feminine characteristics are often connected to what is mysterious, what is changeable, what flows like water, what is unseen, whereas male characteristics are all about what's solid and unchanging, what is up front or on the front line. Female characteristics are more in the background, in the shadows. In order to create life, we know that we have to have contributions from both a male and a female. It is the union of those two that accomplishes this. So in the beginning of the creation story in the Bible, there was darkness, okay? There was a void. There was an open space, the female. And God spoke into the darkness and created light, the male. And the union of the feminine aspect of darkness and the male aspect of light gave rise to the rest of the entire creation. Think about how we all began our human lives, in the darkness of our mother's womb. The womb is a place of darkness. It's mysterious. Even with all the scientific knowledge we have today, we're still not sure exactly how what all takes place in that womb over the course of 9 months happens. It's still, we consider it a miracle. We know that it does happen. We don't know how. So I'm going to read now from a lesson of an online course I took several years ago that is entitled The Dark Mother, which again, I know might sound funny to our ears at first, but I would ask you to try to remember that that's only because we are more familiar with God as male and light, but spirit, as I said, in its totality is, as we know, both male and female, and both light and dark. Okay, it begins. Dark mother is she who resides in the dark, the unknown, the silent, the incomprehensible. She asks you to enter and face all that you cannot understand or control. She insists that you acknowledge the truth, that you are not in control, that everything changes, and that ultimately you never know what is coming. If there has ever been an accurate description of 2020, that's it right there. But most importantly, when she asks you to meet her, she also asks you to allow her to embrace you in the unknown. Consider the contrast between these two scenarios. You are in darkness, no light, nothing you can see at all. You are disoriented. There's no explanation of how you got here and what's going on or what will happen next. You are cold and alone. How do you feel? Or, second scenario, you are in darkness, no light, nothing you can see at all. You are disoriented. There is no explanation of how you got here and what's going on or what will happen next. All around you upwells a presence, a warmth, a comforting, wise, strong, loving embrace. How do you feel? The first scenario is actually how most of us feel about not knowing, about not being in control. We feel desperately alone and therefore afraid. From that place of fear, all we can think of to expect is some kind of horribleness. The second scenario is the truth of the dark mother. She is the darkness that knows, the original darkness out of which all light must emerge. Okay, let's go back to the womb and back to the creation story. Darkness covered the face of the deep. Out of that came the light. Out of the darkness of the womb comes the life. She is where you came from and where you return to, before birth and after death. In every transition you face, she is present, because when you transition or transform in life, there is a necessary entrance into her realm, the unknowable. Again, think about that imagery. In order for us to get to the spirit realm, where we are before we're born, to earth, we have to go through the darkness of our mother's womb. This is saying that it's the same in every transition in our life. We must go through the darkness of the unknown to get from one place to another. It continues. Her nature is love, nourishing, sheltering, and ever present. When you enter the unknown or the uncontrollable, she is your home, your comfort, regardless of circumstance. At our core, most of us exist in a state of emotional overwhelm, largely because of our incredible primal fear of the unknown and our deep-seated feeling that if we feel disoriented or out of control, something awful must be happening, and we feel alone. Connecting to the dark mother, or as we said earlier, to the female aspect of God, means that you begin to seek and find solace, restoration, and potential in the unknown, in the dark times, in the emptiness. It means that because you have made a home in the darkness, you can no longer be manipulated by the threat of aloneness, of apparent instability, of rejection, or disorienting life changes. Okay, I want to insert something here, something new from the last time I taught this, from another teaching I did afterwards. It's from a guy named Kyle Cease, and it relates to what's being said here about making a home in the darkness. I'm going to read a piece from him and then repeat what I just read to you, and you'll see how the two fit together, how they're both making the same point. This is how you get rid of the fear of anything, including darkness. He says, we need to understand that as the old world collapses, what's been happening in 2020, we can fly. We don't have to fall to go down with it. Okay, so get that image. As everything is collapsing, we don't necessarily have to collapse with it if we realize we can fly. Okay, we also need to understand it is our higher self that is in control. We don't always get to decide the timeline. Life itself will decide how it unfolds. Like my brother was talking about on Sunday, we have a certain power over our own will, creating our own reality, but then there's also the collective reality that we have to deal with. Okay, this is it right here. And when what we're fighting or what we're afraid of actually happens, which it has for many of us this year, we're free. We can stop fixing and fighting and manipulating. We no longer have to come up with a strategy to avoid it. When our biggest fears happen, we can move into the new world freely. When you move from a stance of protection, of just trying to hang on to your life as it is, to one of acceptance that a huge change is about to happen, ready or not, when that shift in you happens, you're on a completely new level. When what you fear happens, the fear of it dies. Do you get that? So when it happens, you don't have to be afraid of it happening anymore, okay? That fear no longer exists because the thing happened. So the fear of it is gone. This is exactly what the other piece was saying about the darkness and the fear of it. I'm going to reread it now. Connecting to dark mother, or the feminine aspect of God, means that you begin to seek, find solace, restoration, and potential in the unknown, in the dark times, in the emptiness. It means that because you have made a home in the darkness. You can no longer be manipulated by the threat of aloneness, of apparent instability, of rejection, or disorienting life changes. I read a quote the other day that said, "If you throw me to the wolves, I'll come back leading the pack." So basically what that's saying is you're not afraid of the wolves if you make friends with them. Okay. So I also love the part where that says you begin to see the darkness as a place of potential. And we've talked about this before. In the light, you see everything as it is. You know what's there. But when it's dark, the potential, the possibility for anything to be there still exists. If you walk into a dark room before you turn the light on, you get the feeling that anything could be in there. An elephant could be in there. A stack of $1 million could be in there. A brand new car could be in there. Anything. But once the light is on, once you flip that light on and you see what's actually there, then the potential or the possibility for everything else that could have been there disappears. So I hope we're all understanding this. So there's actually more potential and possibility in the dark than there is in the light, or potential for creation. Let's go on. Connecting to the dark mother also means that you need not fear the wild, often unbridled and uncontrollable power of your emotions. You know that you are held even more deeply in an ancient stillness that rests underneath all the tides of emotion and life, regardless of their intensity. As long as you resist the seemingly overpowering wild nature of your emotions, you will be vulnerable to emotional abuse and manipulation because you are so invested in not feeling, in not facing loss or the darkness of what you fear most. Okay, remember what we just read from Kyle Cease? The more you don't want it to happen, the more fear there is, but as soon as it just happens, fear of it is gone. You are so resistant to being out of control because you misunderstand the wisdom inherent in what seems out of control, like our most powerful emotions. Okay, I'm going to go back to to the analogy of the woman having a baby. Okay, that is an out of control feeling. Men may not understand it, but if you're a woman and you've had a baby, you understand that at some point you realize, I'm not in control of this. What's going to happen is just going to happen. I don't know how bad it's going to hurt. I don't know how long it's going to last, but it's happening. But if you're afraid of that, if we were all so afraid of that and resist, and honestly, the more you tighten up and resist it, the harder it is for the baby to come through. I know that by personal experience. I had to have 2 C-sections because part of me was so resistant of not wanting the pain. But if you just breathe and flow with the pain, it happens much more quickly. Okay. But Dark Mother is present there, even with our strong, intense emotions. And she is moving with love for you on your behalf, even if you don't understand how. If you fear being left alone, and you are in a relationship that threatens abandonment, you will often be willing to betray your own needs and your own truth in order to have companionship, however compromised it may be. If you fear or reject your anger because it is powerful, you will ignore or repress it and therefore lose its protective, boundary-setting, safekeeping function in your life. If you fear loss and change, you will compromise everything, including your vitality, self-respect, and deepest needs in order to maintain a comfort zone that can be mediocre at best, abusive at worst. In contrast, if you have cultivated a relationship with and trust in the dark mother or the female side of God, that dark uncertainty, you know there is nowhere she cannot be with you. What does the Bible say? Where can I go from the love of God? Even if I make my bed in hell, you are there. And you will have a home, okay? A resource to turn towards, even if you are left by a partner, overcome by a powerful emotion, or confronted with a radically unexpected and emotionally charged change in the perceived stability of your life, like a job loss, death of a loved one, or personal injury or sickness. Wow, that paragraph was deep. It's saying that if you try to hang on only to those things you can see in the light that you think you're sure of because of the fear of what might be in the dark, then inevitably you will start to compromise yourself. You will be less of who you could be. You will give up all the possibility and potential that lies in the darkness because you want to always stay in the light and always never have to enter into a place of darkness or uncertainty. But think of it this way. Everything that exists all the time, whether you can see it or not, okay? Whether the light happens to be on or off, what's in the room is still in the room. You just can't see it. Things like joy, health, and abundance are always as readily available as doubt, fear, and sadness. It's just a matter of which you choose, as we've talked about before, to reach in and grab from that dark space of potential. It's just like getting a sub sandwich from Subway, okay? You're walking through the line and you can choose what ingredients you want to be on your sandwich, okay? But unlike the experience at Subway, that realm in life where everything exists at the same time, where everything is still a possibility, is in the dark. You can't see it. Because once the light hits and you choose, then everything is decided. And the potential and the possibility for the situation to be other than what it is ceases to exist. That is why we have to get comfortable being in the dark. Hopefully, we've all learned to do that a little bit this past year. So the lesson about the dark mother ends this way. It says, notice every time you are being asked to sit in the unknown, in big ways or small. Instead of filling that dark space of the unknown with thoughts that lead to emotions like anxiety, use this time as an invitation to rest in the embrace of the dark mother. You know, sometimes I like to think about it, on a really, really hot day, when you go into the darkness or the shade, it's a relief. It's actually a relief. So sometimes we can just shift your perspective a little bit and think of the darkness as that and not as someplace scary, but as a place of relief from heat. Choose restoration and shelter in her when you feel afraid or uncertain. Choose to focus on the potential that lies in the darkness rather than the possibility for disaster. And then watch what happens, both in your responses to life and to other people as well as in your emotional state. Okay, so when it says watch what happens, my mind immediately goes to what our theme for next year is. Get happy and see what happens. Now, it's interesting that it doesn't work the other way around, but that's the way we like for it to be. We like to say, see what happens, and then I'll decide if I'm happy about it or not. But that's not the way it works. You have to feel the feeling of getting happy before it comes into existence. Okay, so this is saying choose to see and experience darkness in a different way. Flip the script. It doesn't have to be scary. Instead, the unknown can be restful and exciting. Okay, now we're going to learn more about the darkness and what is contained within it from that incredibly wise and spiritual guru known as Winnie the Pooh. This information is actually from a video that I watched, and it was called Emptiness and Ease, the Wisdom of Winnie the Pooh. It says, many mythologies and holy scriptures describe the void as the generator of everything, that it is the nothingness that transmutes itself into creation. Thus, everything is generated from or out of nothing. This is a commonality amongst creation stories. This nothing that everything comes from is typically seen as the void or a primeval sea or ocean. All of these myths and the creation stories of various religions all have in common that they begin with a void, darkness, nothingness, and then things are created from no thing. But what does all that have to do with Winnie the Pooh? Glad you asked. The most recent incarnation of Winnie the Pooh series is a movie called Christopher Robin. And actually, my brother and Brandy and Micah and Esther and I took my mom to see this a couple years ago when it came out, because that's what she wanted to do for her birthday. She will never, ever, ever grow up. And we hope you don't, Mom. So this movie, Christopher Robin, which if you're somehow not familiar with the story, Christopher Robin is the little boy that Pooh and the other animals in the story belong to. They are in reality stuffed animal toys in Christopher Robin's playroom, and supposedly all the adventures of Winnie the Pooh have been created by and take place in Christopher Robin's imagination. But this movie takes a look at his life as an adult after he has grown up and has forgotten all about his colorful, imaginative, and playful childhood. As a boy, Christopher Robin had spent much of his time, whether it was literally or just in his mind, in a place called the 100-Acre Wood, with all of his talking animal friends, Pooh, Tigger, Eeyore, Piglet, Rabbit, Kanga, Roo, and Owl. And they would regularly go on exploits full of singing and playing and pretending. But all of this ends one day when Christopher Robin is sent away to boarding school, and he's not allowed to take any of his animals with him, which that happens very often in the United Kingdom, in Britain, which is where this story takes place. So the movie chronicles this event and Christopher's subsequent adulthood, where he has become a workaholic, employed by an advertising agency. His life is predictable and dull, and he has forgotten all about the wonder of his childhood. Because of this, the main conflict in the film is Christopher Robin's unavailability to his family. His wife and daughter rarely enjoy leisure time with him, and consequently, the entire family suffers. So one day, back in the 100-Acre Wood, Winnie the Pooh wakes up to find that all of his friends are missing. And in his effort to go find them, he is led through a tree, which is actually a portal into the real world, where he finds Christopher Robin, who has now become a man. One of the most profound lines in the film spoken by Pooh is, "Doing nothing often leads to the very best something." This is reminiscent of all those creation myths and stories where the void of nothingness is the point of origin for everything. There is a phenomenon humans experience called attachment. It is when we become entangled in a specific emotion due to a certain expectation of reality, and we cut ourselves off from any new modes or ways of experiencing reality. When we cling to any aspect of reality as the only aspect, or allow our expectation to be the only acceptable outcome, we disallow any new reality from manifesting. That's why Winnie the Pooh always says, "I always get where I'm going by walking away from where I've been." That is a simple but powerful statement. In order to let the universe unfold for us in the best creations and solutions, we must first step away from that which we already know. Not out of contempt, but out of the knowingness that each breath taken with ease and determination brings forth new life, new realizations, new connectivity. Okay, I want to stop here for a moment and talk about, again, the concept that I've talked about before called transcend and include. When he says here that in order for the universe to continue unfolding for us, the alternative of which is for us to stagnate or get stuck in a rut, much like Christopher Robin does in this movie, in order for our lives to keep moving forward, we necessarily have to step away from our past and even from our present, away from what we've known, but not with contempt, okay? We don't have to hate it. Just because you walk out of something doesn't mean you have to disown it. Just because you outgrow something, a certain mode of behavior, a relationship, a job, a specific spiritual practice, doesn't mean it was wrong or bad. You don't have to have contempt for it. As one of our opening quotes said, you don't have to eliminate it, just transform it. So I like to think of it visually. Sometimes I find that very helpful if I can get in my mind a visual expression of a concept. So here are two visual examples of what I'm talking about. One is a ladder, okay? As you're climbing up a ladder, you go from rung to rung in order to get from a lower place to a higher place, which is a good way for us to look at our lives. But you don't kick the rungs out as you go. Just because you're not actively standing on rung number 4 at the moment, okay, just because you've moved up to number 5 or number 6, you don't get rid of rungs 1 through 4. They are still a part of the ladder. And in fact, they form a part of your foundation. Each horizontal rung on a ladder provides a certain amount of tension between vertical sides of it. We talk a lot about the truth being the tension between opposites. So if you start taking out the rungs and discarding them, the ladder will lose what is known as its structural integrity. Each of those rungs serves a purpose in your life and literally holds space between two opposing sides. And if the ladder is missing too many of its rungs, it is no longer useful. It is no longer cohesive. It won't hold together. So if you think in terms of your personal growth in any area, mental, emotional, or spiritual, as you grow and climb through the different stages, you don't discard all you knew before every time you come upon some new idea or inspiration or practice or piece of knowledge. You just move up the ladder, and those lower rungs are still there. They've just been added onto now and serve as the foundation for where you are now on your new higher level. The second visual example I want to give you is of a set of nesting bowls, okay? You start out with the smallest bowl, and you put all of your knowledge and experience and beliefs in that bowl. When you gain more knowledge, okay, let's take, for example, you find out the Bible, that the book you were told and previous believed to be inerrant, infallible Word of God. When you find out that it's really been translated, sometimes incorrectly, and edited many, many times, and when you find out that I've turned way too many pages. When you find out, for instance, that in a room centuries ago, by order of an emperor named Constantine, that they decided which books to let in and which books to cut out, and that there were a bunch of outside influences and agendas involved in that process, what do you do? When you come across that new information that's been in your bowl, what do you do? Okay? Part of what's in your bowl is no longer valid for you when you find out this new information. And what most people tend to do at this point is to take the bowl and dump the whole thing out, throw it away. Their reasoning is something like, if all of it's not true, then none of it's true. I don't want any part of it, okay? So that is the height of this dualistic all or nothing experience that we've been having. But a smarter, more evolved, more prudent thing to do would be to take your small bowl and just pour it into or set it inside a little bit bigger bowl that contains all the new knowledge that you've also gained. Even though everything I just said about the Bible is true, that doesn't make the whole thing wrong. There's still a lot of good and pure and true stuff in there. It's not wrong, it's just incomplete. And so instead of destroying the whole thing, you just add the new knowledge and the new information you have into a bigger bowl, and you put it underneath. And your new and bigger bowl now contains both the Bible and the new perspective of it you now have. And every time your consciousness expands, every time you go up another rung of the ladder, every time you transcend, you must also come underneath that transcendence with a little bit bigger bowl that can contain more. You include the new experience and integrate it into your life as a whole, rather than just jumping from this small bowl to that small bowl, from this philosophy to that philosophy, from this religion to that religion. Because when you do that, all you're doing is jumping from small bowl to small bowl, and you're never getting any bigger. So, back to Winnie the Pooh. When Pooh re-enters Christopher Robin's world, he definitely shakes up Christopher's dull, boring, in a rut lifestyle. Christopher agrees to help Pooh find their childhood playmates by following him back through the tree into the world of his youth, the 100-acre wood, and he immediately recognizes the contrast between the two worlds, that of his past and that of his present, who he once was and who he has become. We could say before 2020 and after 2020. On this adventure with Pooh, he has the opportunity to come face to face with his own shadow, where he is shown from Pooh's perspective the effect his workaholic lifestyle has had on his wife and daughter. This is not a pleasant experience for Christopher Robin, but it's necessary for him to understand. And Pooh's role in the story is to help Christopher realize that the way he is currently living is no longer serving him or his family. Through this, Christopher Robin is able to rediscover the loving and playful boy he once was, to bring a bit of those aspects of himself back into the present in order to balance his life. His family is brought closer together as a result. Okay, so the way we were living, to bring this into our reality, the way we were living as a collective prior to this shift we've just experienced is no longer serving us, okay? Just like Christopher Robin's lifestyle was no longer serving him. And it was no longer serving him or anyone else around him. And I think that we can make the argument that the way we were living up to 2020 really wasn't serving all of mankind anymore. But he didn't escape back to the 100-acre wood and become a child again and just abandon his present reality with his wife and his daughter. It wasn't an either or. Instead, he learned to transcend and include. He reintegrated those aspects from his childhood that were good into his new adult life. He learned to create a both and scenario. We don't have to have contempt for everything from our past, most of which is passing away now. We don't have to disown Jesus in order to include other Savior characters into our experience and to honor other religions. Without the age of Pisces that we've just been through for the past 2,000 plus years, the age of Aquarius wouldn't be possible because that is its foundation. But we can't get so attached to it that we are paralyzed and we refuse to move forward. And moving forward, making the transition from one age to the other, involves going through a dark time, a void. And as I've said before, that might not instantly end this coming Thursday night at midnight. But at least we know that there's light at the end of the tunnel and that we're okay with being in the dark for as long as it takes for the transition to complete, for us to make this transition. Okay, in the beginning was freedom, just as the childhood world of Winnie the Pooh is free. Our nature is freedom, unrestrained by the limitations and perils of dualism. Okay, what have we stated every single week this year in our morning blessing? That's been a part of it. Freedom is our natural state. Before we entered into this realm of dualism where we now live, we were free. And part of us is always going to remember that and try to be getting back to it. Without this acknowledgement, we end up like Christopher Robin, fooled by our external circumstances and deceived by our own reluctance to face ourselves. Let's shift back now to the concept we were exploring at the beginning of this video. And this is this guy talking about the void. The Greek word for void is chaos. Now, a lot of you will, if you don't remember anything else about this teaching, a lot of you will remember this because I've repeated it over and over since then, that the Greek word and meaning for void is chaos. Chaos is typically seen as a whole lot of something. For instance, people often refer to a chaotic mess where there's a lot going on. The word, as we know it now, leads us to think of an overwhelming amount of things. But the actual meaning of the word is closer to the concept of emptiness or vast void. So what is chaos? Is it something or nothing? Or is it both? Let us embrace this paradox. Emptiness contains the expanse of creation within its nothingness. This is what Pooh recognizes. And this is why meditation, which quiets the mind, is such a profound exercise. When we retreat into nothingness, we find ourselves in the place of limitless possibility. And we can pull from it whatever we require, because in nothingness, there is no expectation to limit us. Wow. Wow. That is big. Some profound thoughts were contained in those last few paragraphs. Let us embrace this paradox. And what he's referring to is the question that he just asked, and then he answered with another question. So what is chaos? Is it something or nothing? Or is it both? There is the answer. And that's the paradox. He is urging us to embrace this paradox because, as he goes on to say, emptiness contains the expanse of creation within its nothingness. So, chaos, the void, darkness, is both all and nothing. Using that same line of thinking, we can say 2020 was both the worst and the best year. Okay, remember the opening lines of one of my favorite stories, A Tale of Two Cities? It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And yes, 2020 has been dark and may remain dark a bit longer. But in its darkness, we were given throughout this year, and maybe lasting a little bit longer, we were given the opportunity to face our fears, make friends with them, accept what came as a result of them, and then shift out of that reality, realizing that living in fear no longer serves us, and move into a new reality of living in and making decisions based on love instead. Just like I said last week, are you going to listen to the scream of fear, or are you going to listen to the whisper of love? Are you going to follow fear or love? 2020 has given us all the opportunity to make that choice. Moving from the perspective of all or nothing to the perspective of all and nothing, that they are one, is one step closer to us leaving the world of duality behind in favor of unity consciousness and the oneness, which is where we are all ultimately heading. So, don't be afraid of the dark. It is just as necessary a part of the process as the light is, and it holds within it the key to our transformation. So let's say goodbye to 2020 with gratitude in our hearts for all we learned, for how much we grew, for both the darkness and the light that we experienced there. Amen? Amen. So that is what I have for you today. My brother is not here to end the service, but in his stead I will say, oh, thank you, Benny, for reminding me. I have been sent some shouts out for people. Okay, let me open this. Live on live stream, hello to Terry Johnson, Sherby Miller, Miss Bobby Moore Howard, Pastor Gloria, Pastor Don, my daddy, Sheila Smith, Mary Hayes, Emma Gozier, Doreen Panton, Sheila Warner, Vicki Mullins, Rosaline Cooper, Monique Bates, Alita Brown, Annette Eubanks, Brenda Gozier, Callie Gozier, Elaine Jeffries, Ben and Vicki, Donnie Meyer, and Laverne Bryant. Let's see if I have, okay, my brother has sent me Psalm 139. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. I could not think of a better way to end this teaching. Please remember to join us tomorrow night at 7 p.m. online for our continuing series, The Power of Now. And also the following night, New Year's Eve, we're going to do it up in style, even though it's going to be virtual and online. I can't wait to see what all is going to happen on New Year's Eve. It will be 11 p.m. rather than our normal starting time at 10. But please, please, please join us. We're going to bring in 2021 fabulously, as we always do. We are not going to let anything steal our joy. We're going to be happy to bring in 2021. So we will see you Thursday night at 11 p.m. online. I love you. Bye-bye. Be at peace.